Thanks for coming on. If you could just give us a run through of kind of an introduction of yourself and where you've been and where you are currently, please.
My name's Lucy Malarkey. I'm the Managing Director for Women in Social Housing, WISH, and I'm also a co-founder and director of another social enterprise called Positive About Inclusion, which is a company that I set up 3 years ago. And before either of those two hats that I wear on a joint basis, my background social housing through and through. Started as a postgraduate trainee way back in 1993. So yeah, social housing is my passion, and social housing is also where my passion for all things ED&I developed and grew, because I do really believe that the things that we can do within that social housing context have such significant impact beyond the organisation themselves into the wider communities, and with the customers with whom we work in that social housing background. So shall I tell you a little bit
Yeah.
about WISH, first of all? So, women
Yeah,
in
no,
social...
please.
Okay. So Women in Social Housing, we're a community interest company, a KIC, which means, we're a social enterprise, we're not for profit. And the money that we generate through our memberships and sponsorships fund the activities that we do to further inclusivity and gender balance in the housing sector. We hold no assets, so we achieve that everything we do with very low operating costs so that we can, invest the maximum resource into providing those services for our members and to really work towards our vision of a social housing sector where everyone can flourish. So we're actually quite an old organisation, probably older than people think. It was about 25 years ago when the first teeny tiny iterations of WISH sort of evolved. And that was our co-founders who were going along to networking events. This was in London, and they were finding that they were the only women in the room. And for Deborah, she was definitely the only black female in the room. And they sort of, ended up talking to each other. And I suppose it was from that and then, talking to other women, the small numbers who came along, that WISH, in essence, was born. So we now operate across 10 regions of the UK, soon to be added to with the addition of Ireland, which is all quite exciting. And in each of
Oh,
our
wow.
regions yeah, I know. And it's not just Northern Ireland, it's all Ireland. So it's quite some interesting conversations we're having at the moment. But sorry, so within those 10 regions, we have our regional boards made up of volunteers who work across all different sorts of roles and disciplines aligned to social housing. So it's not just pure social housing providers, if you like, such as ALMOs, RPs, LAs, all of any other acronym you can come up with, but also females who work in things like legal services, architects, developers, all of those sort of, like I say, aligned sectors. So our regional boards are the ones who organise and host regional networking events, which are augmented by a range of online activities that we carry out as well. That was a real change for us in the pandemic as a business, having gone from everything being face-to-face to suddenly, adapting like all of us had to provide an online offer, which has been really well received. So we hold events, be those in person, online, which are all about inspiring women, bringing people together, providing inspirational speakers, which, we cover such a range of topics from sector hot topics through to well-being, health, positive mindset, all of that sort of thing that we cover at our different events. And, we've got, I think, I don't think it is true. We have three objectives. These events that, we're aligned to our objectives, and they are around networking. So enabling and inspiring women and supporting them to succeed through those regional and national networking events. It's around career development for us as well. So building confidence and motivation for women at every stage of their career in the sector, from starting out right the way, through to progression. And our third objective is around positive influence. So that's about being thought leaders in the sector, championing equality through our campaigns and the collective voice that we've got. So we're a small but perfectly formed organisation, I would suggest. And our voice is growing in the sector. And one of the questions, and please tell me if I'm rambling on, but one of the questions I often get asked is, why should we, as an organisation, a social housing provider, or a firm of architects, why should we be members of Wish? Why should we do that? Why is Wish so important? And haven't we come a long way already in terms of gender equality? And certainly, across the sector, if you took the whole picture, you would see a lot of females working there. But of course, what you would see is that disparity going higher up organisations. And equally, you would see that significant difference from, say, social housing providers to developers, or people working in the repairs and maintenance development side of those businesses. So, yeah, it's a valid question. Has gender equality moved on? Well, absolutely it has, in so many ways, over the past decade. And just personally, if I think about when I started out my career, some of the attitudes that perhaps I didn't recognise as very sexist at the time, but, those are less prevailing now, without doubt. But all of that said, there is without doubt a significant amount to do. Every year Inside Housing publishes its annual chief exec salary survey, doesn't it? And of course, we see time and time again, year on year, in that the disparity in terms of amounts of females at those senior positions, but also the inequality in terms of pay, particularly when you look at that full pay and benefits package. So that's still very much an issue. As I said before, in sides of the social housing world, like construction, we've actually seen very, very little shift in terms of the number of females in those roles over the past decade. I mean, it's remained fairly constant at around 14%, which is a very small percentage when you think, that actually females make up 51% of the overall population. And every year we do a survey at Wish, that we put out, that's open not just to our members, but for everybody, males and females, to be able to complete. And the most recent set of results we got at the turn of the year, so just in the middle of January, really. And what those latest survey results showed was that more than half, so 53% of those people who'd responded, felt that there are barriers for women in progressing their careers still. More than a third of respondents said they'd experienced sexism in the workplace over the past 3 years, which was actually up from 28% last year. And a staggering 78% of those, who were questioned, felt that they had to assert themselves more than their male colleagues to be heard in the workplace, that professional environment. 55% saying, they've just got to work harder to get the same opportunities. And again, that was, an increase the wrong way from last year's results. So, it's really evident that there's still a need for an organisation like Wish, to champion and to have, that voice. And I think, I suppose aligned to that, the question that people ask is about, well, and certainly, let me share a story with you, actually. So when I first got this job, on social media, there were lots of congratulatory messages, which is all lovely. But there was one message from a man who said, it isn't something like Wish exclusionary. How can you possibly be promoting inclusion through an organisation that's predominantly, for one gender, for females? I answered that person by saying, no, it's absolutely not exclusionary. We do encourage allies to be involved, and our member organisations, the membership isn't just for the females who work there, it is for the males as well. And we recognise that, including males in those conversations is absolutely critical. We've got to work together to make that positive difference, right? You can't just leave it to one group and not the others. But I think that, the reason why female networking is still so valid is because women network differently from men. The research shows that for us to really get the value of networking, we need to form stronger connections. And those connections come from environments where you can truly be yourself and have those shared similarities and connections in a group of all females. That it's a more collaborative, friendly space, a women's only networking event. And what that does is, when women come along to our events, they go back into the workplace, rejuvenated, re-enthused, ready to give all they've got back in the workplace. And in that way, I really truly believe that, women's networks aren't exclusionary. They are absolutely all about inclusion and equity, and, improvements across the piece rather than just for females, at the exclusion of males, if you like. So, yes, that's what we do. That's who we are. What else can I tell you?
No, that's amazing. And that's really insightful, and thank you for that. In terms of, I guess, if we talk about inclusion at the moment, what sort of things have you seen providers doing to kind of support the inclusion as maybe part of their culture, their recruitment process? What kind of things have you seen that's been working, and maybe what needs further work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question there, Josh. And I suppose, I'm going to put my other hat on to answer that. So, as I said, I'm the managing director for Wish 1 day a week, and the rest of the week I have a training and consultancy, EDI training and consultancy provider called Positive About Inclusion. And because of our background, a lot of the work that we do is in the social housing sector. So the co-founder and my fellow director also comes from social housing background. And as one of our clients said recently, which I think is just so lovely, they said, the reason why they work with us is because we are housing fluent. So we are. But what do we see? I think, there's a couple of things that I would point to that are real hot topics, if you like, for, when organisations are approaching us. Without doubt, one of them is around language. And there's this fear, perhaps is too strong a word, but we're not engaging well enough in all of the conversations that make a difference. Perhaps, we're beginning, and I'm using the royal we there, obviously, perhaps we're beginning to do some data monitoring, but we're not having the deeper conversations that go below that, and we're not keeping the kettle boiling. And I think part of the issue is that, we're perhaps putting things like ED&I in a certain box in, different parts of the business that's just dealt with by HR. Well, no, it's not. And if you just leave it in an HR box, then you're not going to have as much of a positive, I don't believe, impact as if you widen and think about, what you're doing in terms of ED&I is about customer care at the nth degree. And I think you've got a much stronger case within an organisation when you, whatever it is that you're doing, you align it clearly to your vision, mission and values, align it to your corporate architecture. Then there's the real buy-in and understanding, not just for the people who are delivering all of the services you're delivering, but your board, your senior team, about the business case, in effect, why this matters, why this is fundamental to what we do. And a lot of the skills, the behaviours that create, embed and sustain an inclusive environment are those that are aligned to customer care at the nth degree. A lot of it is about, it's not rocket science, all of this stuff. And, I probably shouldn't be saying that because it's my business, but it is about, empathy. It is about being able to put yourself in other people's shoes. It is about cultivating a learning curiosity, not having a closed mind to everything else that's going on around you. But yeah, sorry, I've rumbled there totally. But so that certainly is an issue in the sector, is people, getting the positioning of their ED&I initiatives right to get that buy-in, not just internally, but it also, on the board and with your customers as well. Language, we're asked to do lots of work in terms of language and helping people to have those deeper conversations and not be afraid of language. We all make mistakes. Again, it's not political correctness not gone mad. It's not all woke. It's not, you can't say anything nowadays. And there's some really interesting work that we do in relation to language. A lot of what we do as well is in relation to boards and board awareness, and understanding and understanding where they are, understanding where they want to get to, and then helping to prioritize how they get from A to B. You mentioned before recruitment, and we've done quite a lot of work on that, not just in housing. We've just done a really interesting bit of work with Nissan around recruitment, and whether it's whether it's Nissan, whether it's a relatively small housing association operating in the north, a lot of the issues are the same. And a lot of what we see is around inconsistency and errors and mistakes, and things that people do with the right intentions. But actually, if you take a holistic approach with a new, fresh pair of eyes across a whole end-to-end process, you can see how these things don't always line up. And often there are some small, relatively small things, particularly in relation to online presence, that organisations aren't getting right, that can have such a positive impact. I can't think of an organisation, either with whom I've worked or where I've worked, that has ever regularly done, say an annual review of its website and people update different pages. They don't connect. Some of them don't work. They haven't thought about their alt images. They haven't thought about the accessibility. So there are some really simple things that, sometimes you just don't see when you're immersed in it. And I think a lot of people, we've never come across anybody who hasn't got the right intentions, but sometimes it's about to help them. Engagement is definitely one of those things that a lot of organisations talk to us about as well. How do we get that engagement? How do we get the buy-in? How do we get people to see this not as just an HR function, but as to what we do and who we are fundamentally?
Yeah, no, amazing. And I guess, you talk about the websites, and I think even social media is such a powerful thing these days. Are you seeing the negatives side of that regarding ED&I, or are you seeing more positives with kind of providers using that space to kind of sell their brand, their purpose, and what they're all about?
I think we see more positives than negatives. But, as soon as you talk about social media and negative, in terms of gender equality particularly, my first thoughts go to the equal pay bot. Did you come across the equal pay bot on Twitter? We're now at, but so it wasn't, not this year, but previous 2 years on International Women's Day, this Twitter bot appeared, retweeting organisations, Twitter posts, things that they were putting out about the jazz hands events that they were holding in terms of International Women's Day, but retweeting that alongside their actual gender pay latest results. And a lot of organisations were found to be in quite an embarrassing situation. And of course, that extends way beyond the social housing sector, and some of the worst ones were absolutely not in social housing. And there's a lot of real positives in social housing don't get me wrong. But what was really interesting, I think, the second year because it caught everybody by surprise in year one, but year two, when the robot appeared and the bot appeared again, what you saw were a lot of organisations, and there are housing ones that fall into this category, who subsequently took away, what's it called? Got rid of, can't think of the right technical term, removed, took down, that's what I'm trying to think of, took down their tweets when the bot, and that I think was so short-sighted. That's not the answer, because though all of those organisations, will be, I'm sure, doing things in the background, will have plans in terms of how they're addressing that gender inequality, that gender pay gap imbalance that they might have. what a fantastic opportunity to retweet on the back of that. Absolutely, this is our position now. However, we are doing X, Y, and Z, and I think, I think that's a real shame and that you see that, like I say, much further afield than housing. Some really great, very public examples recently have been things like Bud Light, North Face, Target, some of those brands who've worked with trans activists, for example, or launched clothing specific ranges, having worked with queer artists who then faced, got a public backlash and just distanced themselves from their advertising campaign or their specific, range of clothing, etc. Unlike North Face, who did exactly the opposite. When the going got tough for them, they very publicly came out and said, the reason why we've worked with and done X is because this matters to us, and what we are doing is A, B, C, D. How much more powerful a message is that? That's really authentic, isn't it? An organisation saying, we've done this for all of the right reasons. Here are the reasons why we firmly believe in this. And, in effect, it doesn't matter what you're saying. We've done it and we're going to carry on. And I think that's really powerful. And, I think it's a shame if organisations don't stand true and don't have courage in their conviction of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And it really, it smacks less of authenticity, doesn't it? Perhaps a bit of tokenism when people aren't confident about what they've done.
Yeah. No, and it's really, like you said, it's really powerful when organisations go against the grain and use the platform to kind of really share their beliefs and values and, kind of highlight. And it's, it's being open, right? We're not perfect now, but this is what we are looking to do to get closer to that end goal. People are still human and the world's still changing, but, as long as people can see it moving in a positive direction, that goes a long way to, getting the buy-in, doesn't it?
It does, definitely. Yeah.
No, brilliant. So in terms of just a quick about kind of positive about inclusion, obviously your social housing background, are you looking to kind of, what other spaces do you kind of work in at the moment, or are you kind of really kind of honing in on kind of social housing?
Do you know what? You wouldn't believe, and if you'd said to me 3 years ago the sorts of organisations we'd be working with, I would have fallen off my chair in laughter. Such a diverse mix. But honestly, it's been such a steep learning curve, but so brilliant. And I think, having that difference really adds to us. It's not least because, for Karen and I, my business partner, we have to permanently be learning new things. So we've done quite a bit of work with some barristers recently. Well, just the language used in a different sector. So a tenant in the barrister's work, not the same as a tenant in social housing. We've worked with university, private, like Nissan, lots of housing, some very small charitable organisations dealing with brain injuries. We went down to Bristol Older Vic and did some training for them the other week. It's so diverse, honestly. I really can't believe. And the reason why it can be so diverse is because, regardless of the size of the business, from something very small, the Great Run company up here who hosts the Great North Runs, we've been working with them, very small organisation, compared to Nissan down the road, with a 6,000 or whatever employees, whilst the context, whilst the language might be different, a lot of the challenges are the same. And whilst, if you're thinking of something like engagement, for example, engagement with 6,000, there's still the same issues as whether you're engaging with 30 people over here. It's brilliant. It's totally fascinating, and I love it.
No, it sounds amazing. No, that's really awesome. And and the fact that you can still learn new things each day and, kind of take different environments and use them within new environments about the good and the bad. There's a real positive twist that you can kind of have on the organisations that you work with, which ultimately is amazing. In terms of just going back to Wish women in social housing, what is the next? What is kind of the next? Is there a next stage of growth, or how can you get? What are you looking to do to kind of get more people involved? Kind of how's your kind of how do you kind of angle that across your kind of social medias or events, that sort of thing?
It's a great question, and it's incredibly relevant just at the moment, actually. You know, we're doing quite a bit of work with our board of directors in terms of, you know, who we are, where we're going type of thing, really. Well, not who we are, but where we're going. You know, what are our ambitions moving forward? So, you know, that's not all nailed on yet. So I wouldn't want to, you know, put the cart before the horse, as they say. But, you know, I,
No, no.
I think doing really well what we do well now for more people has to be, you know, of benefit. We could, you know, we know there's benefit in enabling women to be involved in networking, in the events that we run, and the feelings, the positives, the learning that takes place from all of those. So being able to, you know, and it's not impossible, certainly not, you know, in the age in which we live with technology, that our reach can be further and have that positive impact on more people. And I think, you know, that's what we're about. You know, we're not for profit. We're not, that's not what we do. So, you know, the bigger reach that we have to make that positive difference, that's what we're all about. And can I just tell you something else, actually, Josh, because I haven't mentioned it and my business partner will be kicking me, but positive about inclusion. We're also a social enterprise. I think I said that already. But when you know, our values are really important to us. So when we set up, yes, we set up as a social enterprise, but what we do in addition to that, a positive about inclusion, is that we reinvest surplus that we generate to provide for free, pro bono, training and consultancy services for organisations who wouldn't, you know, have the resource to be able to do it. So, for example, the sorts of things that we do is, you know, we've helped P-Law, which is a local place near here, write an ED&I policy for their bowling club, which is what they wanted. We worked with a learning disabilities.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we worked with a learning disabilities, what do they call, self-advocacy group, who wanted to know a bit more about sexual orientation and gender identity because they felt that, you know, perhaps they were going to be trying to advocate and support people, you know, who had different lived experiences from themselves, and they wanted to learn more. I mean, that you know, what a wonderful opportunity that was to do that. Great learning for Karen and I, without doubt, but giving something back. So when organisations pay for us, they also contribute to that wider social impact through the things that we do for free. So there we are.
No, that's amazing. That's a brilliant selling point in itself. Bigger impact that or people can have on, you know, others that maybe are in slightly different positions. It's a real positive outcomes. So no, that's amazing. No, I've really enjoyed this, Lucy. Thank you so much for being very open and sharing the story of yourself and Wish, and you know the positive impact they are having. So no, thank you so much.